The terrible, no good, very bad 2023 Toronto FC season has finally come to an end. And with it comes the delayed release of Toronto FC's 2023 end-of-season roster moves. Delayed because typically this gets released with TFC's end-of-season press conference, but TFC didn't do an end-of-season media availability this season because they've been so bad that they're just kind of hiding. So despite being the worst team in the league, Toronto FC did not release their end-of-season roster moves until a bit after most other teams who had missed the playoffs. As we all know, the end-of-season roster moves are basically just the contract options. Whose contracts were expiring, who had their options picked up or not picked up. And TFC this season, I think expectedly, most options were not picked up. Players who were up for option at the end of the season were Luka Gavrin, Alonso Coelho, Greg Ranjitsingh, Thomas Romero, Femi Antonoglu, Victor Vazquez, CJ Sapon, and Amy Mabika. Now, on top of that, Christian Gutierrez was also out of a contract, so he's just gone, no option for an option there. Not surprising, he barely played for TFC. Out of all those guys, the only ones whose options were picked up for the 2024 season were Alonso Coelho and Luka Gavrin. All of that makes sense. Alonso Coelho, good young midfielder. A lot of people really liked him this season. He was solid all year round. Wasn't his fault that the team around him was complete garbage. Coelho definitely showcased that he is a useful piece for now and the future, and is a useful player in Major League Soccer. Makes sense that he's sticking around for next season. Luka Gavrin as well. He came in, young goalkeeper, came in near the end of the season, started a couple games, looked a bit nervous in the first match, but he really settled in. He looks like a very solid shot-stopping goalie in MLS. Distribution needs a bit of work, but every goalie in MLS's distribution needs work. And overall, Luka Gavrin makes sense to keep him around. Losing Romero and Ranjitsingh, it looks like Gavrin is going to be the backup to Sean Johnson next season. Of the options not picked up, Vazquez and Sapon both make sense. Old players who are on expensive contracts who underperformed this season or didn't play enough this season for TFC. Ranjitsingh and Romero, both depth goalkeepers who, when they had their chances, just were not good enough to be regular goalkeepers for Toronto FC. The interesting one is Femi Antonoglu. Now, Femi Antonoglu, all in all, is a very confusing player for Toronto FC. Young guy out of the academy, showed some promise here or there, but also I don't know what position he should be playing. He's not really big or strong enough to be a proper fullback. He's not really fast enough or skilled enough to be a wingback or a winger, but he keeps being played out on the left side. I'm not really sure if moving him into a midfield role is the right position for him either. Like, he's a very interesting player because obviously there's some talent there, but he just doesn't really have a position in the modern game that fits him right now. He's a guy who I think could be a very interesting Canadian Premier League pickup, and I'm really curious to see not only where he ends up, but what position he ends up playing in when he eventually settles out and finds a team for next season. And finally, we have Amy Mabika. Now, Amy Mabika, there still is an option for him for next season, but Toronto FC has not exercised it yet. Like, they're in discussions about whether or not to extend Amy Mabika and take his option for next season, which, I mean, Amy Mabika is a very interesting guy because he came into Toronto FC early on in the season. In his first couple of games, he was great. People were super hyped about him. Young center back, huge, 6'6", was very good his first couple of games for TFC, and people got really excited about him. But then as the season went on and as the team, continued to fall apart around him, Mabika just stopped caring, and it was very evident that Mabika stopped caring. And like the way he played the last 4 months of the season, that's not a player you want keeping around. So like, he's a guy who I think, figure out if he's in, figure out if he wants to be here, figure out if John Herdman wants him here, and then extend the option afterwards. Because like, that's a player who you could go either way. You could say the early part of his time at TFC showed the promise is there and the ability is there and we extend his option, or you can say the end of the season he just was laying an egg every game and let him go. Either works, and I think taking a bit more time on him makes sense because, like, unlike all the guys who left, he could potentially be a useful player for TFC next season, but unlike the guys who were immediately extended, it's not obvious that he's going to be a useful player for TFC next season. So that does the end of season roster move. Still a lot of players on this team from last season. A lot of fat needs to be trimmed and a lot of new additions need to be brought in. As always, we need a striker. Like, problem 1A, we we need a striker, we need something else in the midfield because Coelho and Osorio is not enough at the moment. We need another starting midfielder and more midfield depth. We need true star center backs. And of course, we need proper fullbacks. Basically, everything in this squad needs to be fixed. And, you know, maybe switch out the Italians for other wingers. Everything needs to be fixed. So, that is for this video, and that does it for the 2023 Toronto FC season. The next video I upload will be part of the 2024 Toronto FC season playlist. As always, if you'd like to hit like, if you want to see more of my stuff, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, link is down below in the description, and I will see you next time.